All right, everybody, welcome back to the Horn Takes podcast. I am your host, Sean Redfern. We have watched the broadcast from the Michigan game. We were going to have Kyle Umlang on here today, but I could not make it work, man. I had something come up. I didn't get a chance to record with him, but we will have Kyle on the show sometime this season, man. We got a lot of season left. We will definitely get Kyle on the show, and we need to bring somebody else on the show, too. We need to start getting some folks on the show. Today, we will do the after action review for Michigan. As you guys know, Monday is all about initial reactions, drunk Sean thoughts. And then Tuesday is the after action review where we watched the broadcast. We have looked at the game stats. And what we kind of do is just go back and see what we're going to do. You know, what we were right on, what we were wrong on. Was drunk Sean a little too emotional? So we'll go back on that, and then we'll give some final thoughts. We'll close out Michigan. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you just like to listen to podcasts, you can do it at Apple Podcast, iHeart Podcast, Spotify Podcast. You can also find all the podcast episodes at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. Too simple. After action review, Michigan. Let's get it. This, first of all, was a really, really big win by Texas. And the more I watched the broadcast, the more I saw of that, the more I realized just how dominating of a performance this game was. Now, it wasn't perfect. There was a whole lot of stuff the team could have done a lot better, but I think that's expected in week 2 of the season. You're on the road. You're at a really, I wouldn't say tough place to play in terms of noise, but it's a tough place to play recently from a win perspective. A lot of teams don't go into Michigan and beat Michigan here lately. So obviously, going in there and getting the win was great. Doing it in such a dominating fashion was just outstanding. We'll talk about all the great things they did, a little bit about some of the bad stuff they did. There wasn't a whole lot. Offensively, 389 total yards of offense, 143 on the ground, 246 through the air. And honestly, most of that came in the first half. I think Quinn Ewers was sitting at around 205, 206 yards of passing and 3 touchdowns in the first half. Maybe 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns in the first half. The offense gave up 0 turnovers, which was key number 3 on 4 keys in the prediction on our Friday show. We said you got to go into Michigan and protect the football because this Michigan team last year was one of the best in the country taking the ball away. And I know they don't have all the same guys. It doesn't matter. That's the type of football that Michigan plays. They want to be hard-nosed up front, stop you from running the football. Then they want to drop into sort of loose coverage, keep the ball in front of them, make you make a mistake with pressure on the quarterback, and then they pick it off with defensive backs. I mean, they had 20 plus interceptions last year as a team. So it's not just necessarily the personnel, it's that scheme. It's what they want to try to do. And I know they got a new defensive coordinator. I don't care. Same type of looks. They were 10 of 16 on third down offensively, which is really good. 4 of 4 in the red zone, which is outstanding. I think over the first 2 weeks, Texas is now, I think they've only missed on 1 red zone opportunity this whole season, which if you go back to last year, could be a big problem sometimes. And I think that was a huge reason we lost against Oklahoma was we could not convert from 1 yard out. 0 sacks given up by this Texas offensive line. Outstanding effort because we said it all week last week when we were talking about Michigan. Michigan's defensive line is legit across the board. Their defensive ends are really good. Their defensive tackles are obviously really good. They've got some guys that are going to be high draft picks along that offensive line. Kind of question the depth a little bit, but the first 4 for sure, definitely one of the best units in the country, I think. So giving up 0 sacks in that game, pretty big deal, especially with the amount of passes they threw. Players that popped offensively. I don't think you can start to talk about this. Maybe you can start to talk about this with one other guy, but I don't think you can really start to talk about this without starting with Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm just had an outstanding day for Texas. Gunnar Helm has been a guy that's been at Texas for 2 or 3 years now, and he's got a lot of playing time, but he's primarily been like the second tight end behind JT Sanders. He would come in on like a lot of run situations and be a blocker and all that stuff. He had a few catches. He's even had some touchdown catches, but he's never done what he did Saturday against Michigan. He had 7 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. Absolute career day. And I think he really, I mean, honestly, he outplayed Loveland. And Loveland's a guy that we talked about at the end of last week being just maybe one of the best tight ends in the country. And I still think that. I mean, that guy's really good. He was targeted a lot in this game, and he made, well, both players made a hell of a play. The quarterback made a really outstanding throw, and he made a great catch on a play where Warren Davis sort of scrambled out to the right, wasn't getting any pressure, so he just kind of stood there and waited for someone to get open. And he wasn't really that open, but what he was 6'5". Davis got the ball up, and he went up and got it. So I still think Loveland is a damn good tight end, but Gunnar Helm outplayed him, and I think Gunnar Helm sort of stepped on the scene and said, "Hey, I'm a weapon. I can be a weapon." JT who, and I'm saying that lightly. JT Sanders, an outstanding tight end, big time weapon. But I really like Gunnar Helm, and I always really have liked Gunnar Helm. He just never really fit into the offense the way he definitely fit into the offense on Saturday. So congrats to Gunnar Helm. Outstanding day for Gunnar Helm. I want to see more of it. I think one of the question marks offensively coming in this year for Texas was how do they replace JT Sanders' production? 7 for 98 and a touchdown is pretty damn solid. I don't know. I wouldn't swear that it is, but I don't know that that's not better than any day JT Sanders had at the University of Texas. The other guy we were talking about, we said we don't know if you can start without starting at Gunnar Helm. Quinn Ewers. I think maybe this game Saturday was Quinn Ewers' best game as a Longhorn. The stats weren't just eye popping. 67% of his passes for 3 touchdowns. He completed 67% of his passes for 3 touchdowns. A little over 200 yards passing. What do we say? 246. So about 250 through the air. Not massive numbers, but if you look at the way he did it, it was really, really good, man. He put on a clinic on how to just take what the defense gives you, move around in the pocket when the pressure does come, and deliver the football to guys that are open down the field. I honestly, there was only one play in that game where I thought Quinn Ewers missed one, and it was late in the game. I believe they were in a 5 wide set. Michigan piled up. It was 3rd and long. Michigan was piled up at the line of scrimmage. It's 0 coverage across the board. And I think Quinn missed a guy that was going to be running right down the middle of the field for a touchdown. Just didn't see him. I don't even think, I mean, it's hard to, when you got 5 guys spread across the field, it's hard to go, okay, when the ball snapped, I'm going to look at all 5 of these guys and see which one's open. My simple mind, I look at that and I see the middle of the field so open. I'm looking inside, and I'm going to try to find a guy on a slant or a little seam route, something like that. That's what I'm looking for if I'm a quarterback. And folks, I know I'm not a quarterback, and I'm not trying to be critical of Quinn Ewers. I'm just trying to point out in years past, we would have saw a lot of situations where Quinn probably missed some. Like I don't think Quinn Ewers finds Gunnar Helm in the end zone on that first touchdown last year. I don't think he finds DeAndre Moore when he's moving out of the pocket for the touchdown that got called back last year. So Quinn really, really showed that he feels comfortable in the pocket. He's comfortable with everything Steve Sarkisian's asking him to do. And he's comfortable with the fact that he's going to get protection. And he knows if he doesn't, he can move up and he's going to have guys open. He can move around in the pocket. I thought it was a sort of marquee day for Quinn Ewers. It'll be interesting to see how he builds on that, and if he can continue to do that, he's a guy that's definitely. I mean, we've been talking all since we started doing our shows really heavy in fall camp. He's going to be a guy that's probably sitting in New York at the Heisman ceremony. He's going to be a guy that's probably up for the Maxwell Award. He's going to be a guy that's up for a lot of national awards. He just has to go out and keep doing what he did on Saturday, and he really made it look easy. I mean, there was never a moment in that game where I felt like Quinn wasn't comfortable in the moment. So outstanding game by Quinn Ewers. And then the third player that popped to me was that O-line altogether. I'm not going to try to single out any one of them. Key number 2 on our 4 keys and a prediction on Friday was keep the Michigan defense off balance. And I think the way you do that is you kind of run a little bit when you're not supposed to. You pass a little bit when you're not supposed to. Texas was absent. And I think you have to be consistent. You have to be able to do both of those things in certain times during the game. Maybe when it doesn't make sense, or maybe even when the defense knows you're going to be doing it. And man, were they able to do that? They ran the ball in chunks at times because the offensive line was so dominant up front. It wasn't like a massive running performance for Texas, but it was enough to keep that Michigan defense off balance, allow Quinn Ewers to have time when he did pass, allow him to do what he's so good at, which is that play action pass game. They protected him in the pass game. We talked on Friday. This Texas offensive line versus Michigan defensive line was one of the key matchups in this game to us. We thought whoever won that probably wins this game. And I think Texas absolutely dominated it. I do not think that Michigan was prepared to get what they got physically from Texas's offensive line. They rushed for 4.5 yards per carry, which is, probably it's not amazing, but that's pretty damn solid. You do that 3 times in a row and you got a first down as long as you stay clean, right? Defensively, they held Michigan to 284 total yards, 80 on the ground, 204 through the air. A lot of those yards came late in this game. For 3 quarters, this Texas defense just pretty much kicked the shit out of the Michigan offense. And I know they're breaking in a new quarterback. I know that they're breaking in a lot of new players on that offense. I know that they don't have just really anybody dangerous on the outside. But what Michigan has always tried to do and what they've pretty much always been able to do for the last 3 or 4 seasons is just run the ball. When they just lean on the run, and they could not get it done against Texas. Texas had 3 takeaways, 2 picks, and a fumble recovery. They held Michigan to 3 of 12 on 3rd down, which is pretty damn good. Michigan was 2 for 3 on 4th down, though, which I think you would say is probably not good. But again, a lot of that came late in the game against some of the younger guys. I thought watching the game live, I thought that the offensive line and the defensive line really dominated the game. But man, watching it on the broadcast, whole other level of ass kicking. Players that pop defensively. I don't think you can start this section without talking about Andrew Mukuba. That dude was all over the place. That dude had tight coverage when they did throw around him. He was right there. He had a couple of pass breakups. He had an interception. He came in and made a really outstanding play on a pass that the guy basically caught, and he just knocked it out of his hands. I was I'll be honest with you guys. After the Colorado State game, I was like, where's Andrew Mukuba? What's going on? I didn't notice him at all in that game. But man, he showed up big in the big house. They were talking on the broadcast about how he could be an all SEC type if he keeps playing like that, and possibly an All American. And I don't know that I disagree with any of that. But he really, really impacted the pass game for Michigan. Outstanding game. We'll see if he can keep it up, continue to do this throughout the season. Another guy I thought had a really awesome game defensively was Vernon Broughton. He was very active in the interior on Saturday. He was really good against double teams. He did a really great job of just taking any sort of movement that offensive line got and just shoving it right back in their faces. He did not give up a lot of ground. I still don't think he's quite T'Vondre Sweat. He's still not quite Byron Murphy, but that game was kind of a coming out party for me for Vernon Broughton. Now, Vernon Broughton's been doing this for a while. He's been in the rotation for the last couple seasons. He's always been a backup guy, but he's always came in and sort of given Texas some good minutes. Giving Texas the starters some breather, right, and done it at a pretty high level. Man, if he can play the rest of this season like he played on Saturday against Michigan, I have no more worries about the interior defensive line whatsoever. I thought a lot of them played well, but he especially popped off the page as just a guy that was just better physically than Michigan's offensive line. He made an outstanding play to stop Orji early in the game to force Michigan's only field goal. And he was a huge part of making Michigan one-dimensional on Saturday, and that was the number one key in our 4 keys in a prediction. Texas defense had to make Michigan one-dimensional, make them pass the ball. They absolutely were able to do that, and even when Davis had time to kind of survey the field, the coverage was just amazing. And it wasn't a lot that he had time to survey the field, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, like, every single thing that we talked about on Friday, you go back and watch that game on the broadcast. It's tough to catch as much stuff live, but on a broadcast, you can rewind it a little bit, hear what the guys are saying, stuff like that, see replays. Man, they really did a great job. Players that popped, the third group for me, and this is a group, Trey Moore and Colin Simmons, when those guys were cut loose to rush the passer, they created a ton of pressure. There's been a lot of, I don't want to say hand wringing, but there's been a lot of, oh, how does Texas only have 1 sack through 2 games? Some of that I think is just game plan that other teams have used against us. Some of it's just been the game plan for us, I think. You could tell late in that game when Trey Moore and Colin Simmons were out there and they knew Michigan was passing, they couldn't block them. Just absolutely could not block them. Moore has probably, I won't say probably, Moore has the best bull rush of any of the edge guys that we've seen so far this year. Now, I haven't seen Colton Vasek, and I feel like he has a pretty good one as well. And Simmons is just an absolute nightmare from a speed and quickness perspective, and that bend he gets. He can get around offensive tackles without them even touching him, which is just, I mean, think about that. Simmons got his first career sack in this game, missed another one. I thought those guys, I'm starting to get put at ease on this whole we've had problems with edge pressure for so many years thing under Sark. I, I think we're going to see a lot of edge pressure this season, and we really need to. If we can get that interior getting some push up the middle, it's going to be really tough on opposing quarterbacks. Special teams, lots of short kickoffs, and I don't really understand why. Only 2 of 6 kickoffs were touchbacks. So if he got 2, it leads me to believe he can get 2. Why are we kicking it so short? It ended up working out. I mean, these dudes are a lot smarter than me. My thing is, like, if you can kick the ball into the end zone, why even give them an opportunity? And I know a lot of my college coach used to do that shit. He would kick the ball high, short, into the boundary to try to get, try to get them to make a mistake, not field the ball, fumble the ball, whatever. Kicking it to guys that aren't used to catching it, I get it. I think the 2 years I played college football, that worked 0 times. And I'm not kidding. I think we fucked ourselves more kicking it out of bounds on shit like that than we ever got out of it. And I know our kicker could put it through the back of the end zone. So I don't get why you would put the wear and tear on your players, give the other team an opportunity if you feel confident that they can do it every time. And he did it twice. So I don't know why he wouldn't be able to do it the other 4 times. Missed a field goal. That was a bum. It was funny. When we lined up for that field goal, the guy behind, I talked about him on the show yesterday. Kevin and Colleen with their buddy Matt, season ticket holders there at Michigan. He asked me, he says, how good y'all's kicker? I said, he's pretty good. I think it was like a 47, 48 yarder he made against Alabama as a freshman at home to kind of give us the lead late in that game. And so I kind of talked him up a little bit, and then he misses. And I couldn't tell at the game how bad it was, but it was a bad miss. Like he just completely missed the shit out of that, pushed it off to the right. It's almost like he didn't follow through all the way. I'm not exactly sure what causes that. I'm not a kicker, but the missed field goal ultimately didn't end up hurting us. But you never want to see your guy miss makeable field goals, and especially miss them that bad. We had 3 punts for 39-yard average. That's okay. I think special forces, that's what I call special teams, special forces. I think they're just kind of meh right now. They're just like there. Nothing super special about it. We did see a really good return out of the punt team in game one. I'm sure we'll continue to see some of those things happen. But it wasn't, to me, it just wasn't like it was just kind of a performance. It wasn't like a good performance. It wasn't a bad performance. It was just what it was. And what it was just kind of, whatever. Let's talk about where Drunk Sean was right. I said yesterday that I thought they were really good on third downs offensively, and they were. They were absolutely awesome on third downs, really on both sides of the ball. When you go back and look at the statistics, watch the game over. I said it before, but I think the O line was even more dominant on the broadcast than I thought they were from the stands. We talked about the defensive line just being also dominant, making that Michigan offense one dimensional, do things that it didn't want to do. We thought Quinn looked really good from the stands, and he did. I think he looked even better watching the game on the broadcast. Where Drunk Sean was wrong, I think there was really only one spot. I mentioned that Sark should have run the ball more, and I think I say that every week, man. You guys got to understand. I went to high school in the mid '90s, and I played on a team that we went to the state semifinals, and we probably threw the ball 3 times a game, 4 times a game, tops. We lined up in a power I formation with 2 tight ends. So there'd be like 22 dudes stacked up in the middle of the field right around the ball. It was like a rugby scrum every single play. That's what we did. And I totally realized that football has changed quite a bit since then. It was funny. I did that in high school. I got recruited to a college that threw the ball all over the damn place. I think we threw the ball like 65, 70 times a game. So I had to learn how to pass block like the real way really quickly. Big adjustment from firing off going forward to going backwards and pass blocking. But I said he should run the ball more. I was wrong, man. After watching the broadcast, looking at the stats, I think it was totally appropriate. 32 attempts, and that's a lot of attempts running the football. So Sark continues to prove me wrong on the running the football thing. And again, I thought they did just a hell of a job during that game of when they wanted to just running the ball. You could tell, like, I just want to run the ball right now, and he did, and they did. Congrats to the offensive line. Congrats to the running backs. Congrats to the wide receivers getting blocks downfield. That's important too. Final thoughts on this Michigan win. Despite a bunch of early penalties on offense, Texas was definitely the storm on Saturday. We talk about that on any of these big games, especially when you go on the road. You don't want to weather the storm. You don't want to be passive in those types of situations. You want to go in there and be the ones causing all the havoc, causing all the chaos. And I think besides those early penalties, they really were. It was 24-3 at halftime. They already had 2 turnovers. They take the ball away 2 times. That's what I mean. They were able to do just about anything they wanted to do offensively, and they left 10 points on the board. This game could have easily been 41-3, 41-6. This was a game that 31-12 is pretty good ass kicking on the road against a number 10 team in the country. But this game could have been just absolutely so much worse. And I think that's why you heard Steve Sarkisian say what he said earlier this week about 60 minutes of hell. He knows that his team didn't really finish that game. So he's talking to him through the media, which is a thing that his mentor, Nick Saban, used to do probably better than any other person on the planet. I thought that the answer after Michigan's field goal was just absolutely huge because not only did they go down the field and score a touchdown to make it 14-3, they did it on the ground and they just bashed and mashed and smashed that Michigan defense into the ground. Like it was just one of those drives like where you just go, it's go time. And you just impose your will on another team. And you don't expect to see that against that Michigan team, any Michigan team. So I thought that was a huge moment in that game where at that point after that drive, if you were a Texas fan, you probably just didn't have much to worry about anymore that day. I mean, sure, the game is not over that early in the game. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that all of that sort of anxiety about how this game is going to go and can we do this and can we do that had already been answered by that point in the game. Yes, we can run the football. Yes, we can protect Quinn. Yes, defensively, we can stop their running game. Everything that was a somewhat concern for me, completely not a concern anymore at that point. I noticed that we don't blitz much. We never blitz. I mean, we don't. PK is just not a big blitz guy. But what I don't understand is when we do, you would think not being a big blitzing team, that when we do, it would catch people off guard. It just absolutely doesn't. We hardly ever get home on a blitz. And when we do, we usually just miss. We miss making the play. I thought Sorrell had a kind of quietly had a really, really solid day. He had a big pressure late in the first half to force an incompletion on I think it was a third down. The guy was open, but the quarterback just couldn't get a clean throw off because Barron Sorrell was right in his face. Man, Barron Sorrell is a big, big dude. That he's in the picture right there. You guys can see him on the screen if you're watching this. He is a monster. It was funny too. You know, I mentioned these folks, Kevin and Colleen, that we talked to a lot at the game during the game. The first drive when our defense went out on the field, he goes, "Damn, y'all's defensive line is freaking big." And I think part of that is when you're wearing white, you just look bigger. But part of it also is the fact that yeah, they're just big, man. That is a big group. So and he looks NFL ready. I hope he really like just comes out this season from this point forward and just starts wrecking shop. I think he's got it in him. I don't think he's lived up to his potential at this point. He's always been just outstanding against the run. He's okay in the pass rush. Just I don't know, man. But if he can be as powerful as he was on that pass rush and get home like that a few more times this year, man, he might be staring the NFL in the face as well. Here's sort of a negative one. Jaden Blue had two plays in the red zone, separate drives, where he just completely went the wrong way on running plays or play action. There was definitely action for a run there. You got to get that cleaned up, man. You can't, you talk about wanting to be perfect in the red zone and score touchdowns in the red zones. You can't have plays where the quarterback has to kneel and get killed after he kneels or just run and fall down because you went the wrong way. And I love Jaden Blue, by the way. Corner, if there was one negative for Quinn Ewers in this game, and it's not just this game, it happened last game as well. Corner routes are Quinn Ewers' kryptonite. He has had multiple opportunities this season to hit guys that are pretty damn wide open on corner routes, and he just always misses them badly. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why. I feel like he makes other throws that are harder throws. I mean, the throw he made in that first game to Golden in the corner of the end zone or the front pylon in the end zone where the defender was all over him. And I know he really couldn't see Golden all that well. That was there's like not many dudes on the planet that can make that throw. And there's not a lot of them in college football. There's maybe a handful of guys in college football that can make that throw. So I know he can make the throw. It's just odd that he just never seems to be able to complete it. Another thing that was kind of disappointing in this game, we're always going to talk about the good. We'll always talk about the disappointing as well. I thought the team took their foot off of Michigan's throat after Williams' interception. I thought at that point the team was like, yeah, we got this. We don't, it's time to start celebrating. And I hate that, man. And again, you heard Sark talk about 60 minutes of hell. He knows his team did it. He knows the staff probably did it. I expect to see Texas going forward in that type of situation again. What I want to see, and I don't need to see 60-3, or I mean, I'm realistic. You're not going to score every single time. I just felt like the intensity of the team sort of fell off at that point. I think you hate to see an otherwise outstanding defensive performance kind of marred by a late score, but there were a lot of young guys out there. It wasn't all starters, and they still made it tough on Michigan. Like, it was not easy for Michigan to get that touchdown late in the game. We talked earlier about Simmons. We talked earlier about Trey Moore. The pressure off the edge is much improved in 2024. I think why we're not seeing a lot of sacks is because it's individuals getting pressure on individual plays. There's not a lot of meat at the quarterback type stuff going on. I think it'll come. And I think there's also just been a lot of misses. I mean, I can think of 2 times right this second. I can see the plays happening in my mind where they just missed the sack. They had him, they just missed him. Talked about, the team kind of slacking off. I thought the offense just kind of went dormant in the second half. They had the same amount of second half possessions as they did in the first, but they only had 7 points to show for them. I think you want to correct that. I mean, I think, to me, I don't buy into the whole, like, oh, you're up big, quit trying to score thing. I've never had a problem with teams. The point of the game is to score. If you're an offensive team or you're on an offense, like if you're coaching the offense, well, let me just back up. If you're the head coach, your job is to make sure that the offense scores as many points as it can score. And it's your job to make sure that the defense gives up the least amount of points they can possibly give up. So why people cry when teams like keep scoring late in games, I don't understand. I think in the past, the mentality of we're not going to run up the score, which I hate that term, because you're not running up you're just scoring. You're doing what you're supposed to do. I think that mentality has hurt Texas. Mac Brown needs to bring backups in and just hand the ball off over and over and over and over. So backup quarterbacks weren't getting any sort of, any sort of meaningful reps. I know we're getting nitpicky a little bit, but I just feel like they just kind of took parts of the second half off. We always talk shit about officials. I thought the officiating in this game was okay. I thought the hold on Cam Williams was about as weak as possible. It was weak at best. I know he grabbed a little bit, but then he just pushed him over. And his arms were completely extended. If I'm grabbing somebody and they're trying to get away from me and my arms are extended, they're not going to go down the way the Michigan defender went down on that play. They're going to get drugged now. They're not going to get pushed back. And that's what happened on that play. So I thought it was kind of ticky-tack. I know it was ticky-tack because I saw other ones during that game that were way worse than that one on both sides. They missed an obvious pass interference on Michigan earlier in the game when Wisner was kind of running across the middle of the defense, and the safety came up and just hit him at least a half a step before the ball ever got there. I have no idea how they looked at that and said that wasn't pass interference. I mean, they must have just not been watching. I don't. And I know these guys are human; they make mistakes. But by God, man, like, how do you miss that bad? I just can't make me understand it. So that is Michigan all wrapped up. We will not talk about Michigan anymore on this show, at least in big chunks. We might bring up something that happened during that Michigan game as it's sort of valuable to conversation going forward. But that's it, folks. Michigan is done. Texas goes in, wins 31-12 against the top 10 team. Again, I don't think there'll be a top 10 team by the end of when it's all said and done. But today, yesterday, whatever, Saturday, they were a top 10 team. We'll be back Thursday for a deep dive into UTSA. Not looking that good, UTSA. Find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Give us a subscribe. Give us a follow. Won't cost you guys a thing. We appreciate the support. Email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. I'm working on a hat thing, man. Some of y'all have asked me about these hats. I'm working on it. I'll get a price out. We're going to have to do like a bulk order thing. It's going to take like 6 to 8 weeks to get them done because that's how long it took me to get these done. If you're interested, email me, let me know. You guys have a good rest of the week. Y'all get hooked.